All right, another type of root are going to be called fibrous roots. Now remember the taproot, one major root that is going to extend from the plant that might have small extensions from it, but it will have one just major root. Whereas fibrous roots are going to be a lot of small roots that branch out from a centralized location at the base of the plant. Mainly, this is going to be a part of your monocots. Okay, so all of your monocot plants will have fibrous roots. If you look at the picture here on the right, you can see, for example, what the fibrous roots would look like. Here is the base of your plant, and then notice there's no large central type of root or taproot. There's just a lot of smaller roots that branch out, and that is the extent of the root system, or this grouping of fibrous roots. Okay, this was once again going to fall into your monocot plant category. All right, let's look at root structure. Each root is going to be covered with root hairs. These are tiny microscopic projections that extend along the length of each root. They're there by and large to help increase root pressure, to help in water uptake or water absorption. Okay, at the tip of each root, you're going to find kind of like a hard hat. Like if a construction worker were to wear a hard hat, you're going to find a root cap at the tip of each root. And you can actually see in these pictures both structures. Here are the root hairs that line the roots, each root that would be making up the root system for the plant. And then here on this particular microscopic picture, you can see the root cap. All right, this is just a tough layer of cells that are produced. They're hardened cells. They act as a barrier between the actual cell material of the root that's going to be doing the absorption of water and nutrients, and the hard ground that surrounds it. Remember, the ground is going to be made up of rock and clay, other materials as well. So the root cap is there for protection to help keep damage from being caused to the root itself. Okay, now let's look at stems. All right, our stems, big functions of our stems. They produce the flowers, branches, leaves of the particular plant. Okay, because without the leaves, no photosynthesis. Branches are going to be the pathway to allow water and nutrients to flow, the vascular tissue to move those nutrients from the leaves and to the leaves. And then for flowers, to holding those flowers for reproductive purposes. Okay, it's going to also add support. All right, all of our seed-bearing plants are going to grow up against gravity to help reduce competition for the amount of sunlight exposure. The stem is also going to be the major pathway where your vascular tissue or xylem and phloem will connect with the roots to allow for water and nutrient passage to occur from the roots to the other parts of the plant. Alright, now remember at the very beginning of this topic we did get into vascular tissue and what it's made up of. So remember, just a quick review, it is made up of xylem and phloem. Okay, the veins of the plant, okay, are going to be made up of xylem and phloem, and these veins travel from the roots through the stem, branches, leaves, flowers, fruits, whatever makes up that particular plant. Okay, the vascular tissue is going to flow through all of it, and that is how all of the nutrients and water and gases get transported. Remember again what xylem is. Xylem is the pathway, the vein that transports the water, usually up from the roots to the rest of the plants. It's also going to carry the dissolved minerals. And then the phloem is, its main purpose is to transport the nutrients produced during photosynthesis from the leaves to the rest of the plant, because the stems, the roots, the branches, all of those things need nutrients for energy and life processes, and so when those things are produced, when those nutrients are produced through photosynthesis, the phloem will be the main pathway that those particular nutrients can travel from the leaves to the rest of the plant. Alright, so now let's get into the stem structure. Okay, if you look at this picture, you see all of these different pieces or parts of a stem labeled. So let's look at some of those. A node is where your leaves are going to attach to the stem. Okay, so here you see the node. Okay, and a node is where the leaf is going to attach to the stem. Your internode, your internode is just the part of the stem that is the intermediary or the in-between that forms between the two nodes. So here's a node and here are some leaves that are going to be out here. This internode part of the stem, okay, is the in-between till you get to the next node, and then leaves will be produced out here. So that would be the internode. Buds, there aren't any, I don't see any buds. This could be one here. But they're not labeled on this picture because we don't see any. But buds are going to be the undeveloped tissue. This is where new stems can grow, new leaves can grow. They're found where leaves attach to the node. So in this picture, you can kind of see one right here. This could be a bud where a potential new leaf could sprout and grow. So they usually be found here, or they can be found at the top of the stem where more stem can grow. Okay, so let's look at how growth is going to occur. Your primary growth of your stem is produced at an area called the apical meristem. Okay, this is the length part of the stem. This is located at the very tip of the stem and at the very tip of the roots. Your secondary growth is going to help the stem and other parts of the plant widen. Okay, this is going to be considered a lateral meristem growth. Most of your monocots produce fresh growth, and they do not grow very tall, or fleshy growth. So they're going to be more secondary growth. They don't grow actually very tall, so they don't have any type of primary growth. Theirs is mainly secondary growth. Your conifers and most of your dicots are going to have a lot of primary growth. Okay, that's why they can get extremely tall, but they'll also have a lot of secondary growth where they can widen out and get really thick. The thicker the stem, the more support that's going to be there to allow it to get reach those really high, those really tall heights. Okay, so since we're looking at stems, let's talk about wood and bark, because the stem of a tree looks totally different than the stem of a flower or the stem of a small plant. Okay, so let's talk about wood and bark versus stem. Most of what we consider to be the wood of a tree is actually just multiple layers of xylem, and it's xylem that's not being used anymore. Okay, as once these layers are produced, that xylem that makes up part of the wood actually becomes non-functioning. Okay, so if you see the picture in the background, each one of these layers, most of those layers, is just non-functioning xylem. It's usually laid down year after year, so you can get a new layer, okay, of this. They're called rings. You can get a new layer laid down, okay, each year. And as these rings are laid down, or as these layers of xylem are produced that aren't going to be used as xylem, they don't transport water anymore, so they're not going to be called xylem. They're actually going to be called a heartwood. Okay, so the heartwood is the part of the tree that allows for the secondary growth, the widening, the support of the tree. Now, there are parts of xylem within the tree, within the wood, that can still transport water. That way the heartwood can receive that water, and that's called sapwood. Okay. Now the bark, this outer layer of the tree, of the wood, the stem of the tree, that's made of phloem. So you have this inner parts, these rings that form, that's made of old xylem. It turns into heartwood. And then the outer layer, this bark, is actually made of phloem. It's also made of cork as well. Okay. So here's your picture. You can see this heartwood. Okay, your heartwood is going to be those those non-functioning xylem that's produced, that's laid down year after year. You have your sapwood, which is the type of xylem that can still allow water flow. Okay, and this provides obviously the transport of nutrients, but it also provides nutrients for the heartwood. And then you have your phloem that forms the bark. So it's still all the same parts that a plant that doesn't have wood as its stem, still the same parts. It's just used in different ways. So you can definitely see in this picture the heartwood versus the sapwood. Okay, here's your heartwood, the darker part, and you can see the little rings. Okay, and each ring is laid down year after year, and we can actually look at a cross section and look at these rings to determine the age of the tree. And then here's your sapwood. Okay, that still allows for water flow to occur, and then this outer layer would be where the bark starts.